now that I have the doors all lined up with the body, everything looks really good there. I just got a little bit of tweaking to do. I want to make sure I had this windshield in place so that I can guarantee I have all of this corner all lined up. And once I got the windshield on, it's pretty cool. This windshield's pretty simple. It's like 8 bolts to mount the whole thing to the cowl. There's not any adjustment to it at all. It's pretty well fixed, even though things are slotted and ovaled out. It just fits so perfectly tight. Where it is where it has to be. Yeah, I could modify it and make some adjustments, but it actually works out really well. The alignment here is great. The alignment to the door is a little bit off. But the alignment here at the cowl and the body lines to the trim that I'm planning on using is way off. That's the way it was back in the day when it was right off the showroom floor. It just didn't look good, and especially the way the trim lines up. So that I definitely want to fix. So while I'm doing all that, I put the dash in so I can make sure how all this fits. I put the end of this dash, I built it so that it would cover up a welt, kind of a fabric welting, a nice upholstery finish on this edge. Originally it just had a metal edge right here, and then it had a lip, and it had a cardboard stock piece that was stamped and painted that just went under that lip. Worked great for 1950, but not the type of quality I want to do on this. So I was going to do a custom piece on here, similar to what most of the cars were doing in the 60s and 70s. So I built this to cover that up. That bead welt trim piece would go right up underneath this edge, and then this contoured into the windshield. Well, the windshield wasn't on at the time when I built it, so I was guessing. Well, because I guessed, now the door won't shut. So it's hitting there on the dash area that I built. So I've got to cut that off and recontour it and redo this edge. And it looks beautiful. It's always a shame when something that turns out so nice, it doesn't work with other things. So I got to turn this off, redo it, basically so that I can get the dash pushed forward just a little bit so that it clears this edge of the door. There's 2 ways you can do it. I can split the door and move it back, and you're running the risk of problems with the wing window, or I can just cut this area off. I can grind back the windshield pillar and then recontour and bring all this together. Since this is already all hacked up, that makes the most sense. So that's what I got to do, trim this off both sides, and then figure out how that's going to work, and at the same time do that here too. And I'll show you. So basically the trim has this sweeping line. The top of the trim piece is actually in this groove. So imagining that going into that groove, there's a gap in here. And when the door is open, this little piece went in there to cover that up. That is where it fit. So right from the factory, there was that big gap right there. So what they did is they just mounted this up higher to cover up that gap. So then you've got this chrome trim piece here, and this one's swooping up, that one horizontal. Looked horrible. Most of these Jeepsters I see, this piece is missing. And I'm sure that's probably why they just took it off, because it looked bad, or it just didn't fit right, and they tried to line it up, and then, who knows. But as you can see from this piece, it is just really beat up. They were missing on mine, and this big huge gap I could see was definitely an issue when it came to if I found the piece. Well, I did finally find this smashed one, and I found a similar smashed one for the other side. This was 75 bucks. Very small production number of these made. So as they are disappearing over the years, they've become very expensive. So you can see this is the opposite side. They are a left and a right. They do have a different fit when it comes to fitting this contour. One side is bigger than the other. Making these completely from scratch is extremely difficult. Remaking them from being smashed, a lot simpler. So as bad as these look, I'm actually going to completely just smoothen and flatten these back out and recontour them and get them back to the original look and shape, the way they came from the factory. It is doable. It's very difficult and very time consuming, but it is doable. So yeah, 75 bucks a piece for these smashed things. But they were the only ones that I could find, and I've been looking for over a year. So back to that idea then, what I need to do is plan this line, what the body line is supposed to be, and then I've got to fill in this gap. So you split this and bring it up, or you split this and bring it down. But that is a full panel underneath there. So there's several ways of doing it, but I definitely need to close in that gap. This contour and gap doesn't match either. So I'll put the wing window on to see how this all comes together, but I believe this should come down and then follow that door line. So that'll also have to have a metal piece welded in. If you want perfection, those are the things you just have to do, or don't look at it. And my eye goes to things like that, so it's got to be fixed. So this is the area that I fabricated. I wanted gap here at the bottom, and then this area here, this distance is what's interfering with the door, and this distance is also interfering with the door. So if I split this, and then I'll have to trim this edge back, then I can reform this piece and work it to fit the door and still leave me just enough relief in this area where I can come up with a nice upholstered piece for these kick panels. Well, that pushing in there, that relieves this edge, but it's still hitting right here going in, so I need to cut all along this edge so that I can get it further in, because it's hitting right there. Once I trim that off, then I'll recontour this shape, and I think what I'll do is I'll trim some of this A-pillar back too, so that I can get more relief there, because this is still going to be really tight. Now that I have the dash out again, I can see this area right here, which is part of the body. This area is just barely clearing right here. So by the time I get the contour that I want on my dash, it hits. So I need to trim this area off on both sides. Alright, I've sliced and diced and massaged. I still need to trim just a little bit off right here, but even with the wind lace on here, looks like that's going to fit. I'll close this gap up so I can weld it. Well, it's just a matter of massaging all the way around. I've got a low spot right here I've got to bring up. Pretty easy to just tap that up into place. I've got a big gap here, no gap here and decent gap on this edge. So that's just a matter of playing with the fitment of the glove box, getting that exactly where I want it, and then I'm probably going to have to split this all around here and close up this gap and then re-weld it. After playing around with this for a little bit, I'm trying to decide on how this trim's going to come across. I'm pretty confident that my trim's going to cover this bottom half, but it's not going to cover this top half. So I think what's going to be the easiest is to split this open, because I like this edge that it has. Pull that down and put a wedge of metal in there, weld it all up, and that should get me all the perfection that I'm after here. I was trying to decide whether I was going to change the shape of this A-pillar, and I figured, well, just to make sure, I probably should put the wing window on and make sure there's nothing there, and sure enough, there's a little piece of trim that kind of fits into that hole. It's not a real nice outfit in here, but it's close enough. It kind of draws your eye away from the fact that there's a big gap right there. But with that in mind, I got thinking, uh-oh, I never really checked to make sure this wing window cleared the dash. The dash sticks out quite a ways, but I do have plenty of room. I got almost an inch of space between the corner of this and actually hitting on the dash. So one of those things when you're doing custom work, you got to think about every possible scenario and keep all your pieces nearby. But this is going to work out. Got just a little bit of a twist in this that is affecting that glove box. So I need to probably pry that side out while I mount this side down. Speaking of mounts, I still need to make mounts for the bottom corners of each side of this. And then there's a brace back here that is going to be supporting my brake and clutch pedals, and it'll also be supporting here for my steering column, and I don't want any flex anywhere in all of those, so I'm going to mount a diagonal brace that goes up to the bottom side of this header panel. So that'll tie all of that in. So for now, I want to bring this area up. I've got a low spot right here, and it's also low right along this line for the glove box. I've got a little bit of a gap here, and I'm hitting here. So once I take this dash off and I massage this upwards, that should get all my gaps where I want them to be, and then I can just take up any of the adjustments with the hinge that's underneath there. Other than that, I want to do a key switch here, and then I have a light switch and a windshield wiper switch. They'll go on either side of this gauge. Since the wiper switch is one I won't use very often, it'll be the one that's furthest away from me. The light switch, of course, we use quite often, and the key switch. So I'll put those on each side of the steering wheel, and then use the same distance for there to just kind of tie it in cosmetically. This is looking really good. I'm getting excited. I just little by little more of this is coming together. So now I just need to get the windshield back off. Now that I have the ends of these welded, I can grind that all down, and then whatever I need to do at the base of that where I've welded, clean that up cosmetically. It works great for the trim now. Yeah. All right. Well, if you like what I'm doing, give me a like. Subscribe if you haven't. Really appreciate it. It helps me build my channel. Thanks again. Goodbye for now.